For those that aren't aware, we just went to the Austin Grand Prix, our first ever Grand Prix, and we had, honestly, a pretty good time. We're going to give you a couple tips, though, on kind of things that we had learned along the way on what not to do, but also things that we really enjoyed so that you can check them out whenever it's your turn. This is Turn 1 Podcast. We're your hosts, Jeremiah.
And Thomas.
And this is the Austin Grand Prix.
So yeah, check the timestamps below. We're going to cover probably a lot in this video. No idea how long we're going to go right now, but we're going to hit a lot of different topics. So if there's something specific you're looking for, if you're going to a race this season or in a future season, look around and see if anything matches. Let's start with our tips for attending an F1 race as a general admission fan. That's the majority of fans there are going to be your GA fans. That's the experience that we had. Number one, look for alternative parking options. We started out by looking at the designated Circuit of the Americas Formula One sponsored parking lots. Started at $300 for the weekend, minimum. And I'm talking like most of them were like $500-$600.
It's terrible.
Now, as we're driving up to the venue, though, we already had these plans before time, but as we're driving up to the venue, we saw tons of lots, very walkable distance from the track that were $20 a day, $40 a day, $150 for the weekend, whatever it might be. We ended up in a parking lot right across from the secondary main entrance to the Circuit of the Americas. If you consider turn 15 the main entrance, we came in right at kind of turn 1 or the main straightaway. And honestly, we were closer than most of the designated COTA parking lots, and we only paid $150 for the 3-day pass to park there. It was pretty fantastic. And we saw a lot of people leaving, too, that were in real big traffic jams in those Formula One lots.
Yeah. I'll say for number 2, we have make a schedule for each day, but realize everything does take longer than you think. When we say make a schedule, unless you're just one of those people, we don't necessarily mean jot every single thing down on an itinerary and make sure that you're hitting all the points right when you need to. No, but have a rough idea of the things you want to see or you'd like to see, and understand when we say things take longer than you think, you need to plan. For example, if you want to get there when the gates open, plan to leave wherever you are about an hour and a half to 2 hours beforehand, just so that you can get there, because you're going to be waiting in a line with all the other people trying to enter as well. And for any kind of concession stand or fan experience that you want to do, there's going to be a line already waiting. In fact, for the simulators, there was people camped out before they even opened them up, people just laying in the grass next to them waiting for their turn. So understand you're going to be waiting no matter what you do, so plan a little bit ahead on that.
Yeah, that one, I mean, I went into the weekend having this full idea of how we were going to get everything done. And we got most of the things done that we wanted to, except a lot of those fan experiences. We also got to the track. We got into the track later every day than we thought we would because of the traffic and the parking situation, which was the same for everybody, no matter which parking lot you were in. And then finding your seats take longer. These tracks, no matter which track you go to, like obviously ours was Circuit of the Americas for the United States Grand Prix. These tracks are massive. They're way bigger than you think. It takes a long time to walk places. And remember the elevation changes. It just is a crazy amount of added time that you're not ready for. But number 3 tip on attending the F1 race as a general admission fan, probably the most important from a health perspective, bring sunscreen and find some shade when the racing action isn't happening.
Yeah.
So as our friend Jeremiah can attest to, who went the entire first day, Friday, with no sunscreen and relatively little shade, he's looking a little toasty over there right now.
I've got a nice tan going.
He's also bathing in aloe vera. Yeah, bring the sunscreen. They don't allow aerosol cans, so make sure you bring like the lotion kind of sunscreen. You can bring little backpacks. We brought those little drawstring, like an Adidas bag. Fill those up with sunscreen. Use it every hour, every 2 hours. You're going to be sitting in the sun a lot, no matter which F1 race, honestly, you go to. Even if you go to one of those European F1 races where there's a lot of cloud cover, you can still get sunburned with the cloud cover. Just be mindful. Of course, in Texas, Mexico City, any of the North American or South American Grand Prix, the sun can be pretty brutal. Be mindful of that.
For number 4, we put bring lightweight, heavy-duty lawn chairs. There's a caveat to this because me and my brother, we brought the lightweight, super cheapo Walmart fold-out chairs for like $8. Thomas, on the other hand, brought this heavy duty, awesome, super lawn chair, but there's a problem with that. His shoulder was dying, and Ryan and I's problem is we were uncomfortable the entire time. And you're going to be doing a lot of sitting around the track, whether you're watching the feeder races, like the Porsche races and all the support stuff, or you're just trying to find a shaded area, and you just want to be able to have a place to sit down that's not on the ground. Make sure you have some kind of folding chair in some kind of way. I mean, if you want to sit on the ground in the grassy area on a hill on a blanket, that would be fine too, but understand you're going to be carrying that blanket with you the entire time.
Yeah, we didn't find really bugs or anything to be an issue at Circuit of the Americas. Like sitting on the ground wouldn't be a problem, but you might fight for a view and that view can get covered up by people with chairs. And there's
Right.
really nothing you can do about that. The chair at least kind of guarantees you some eye level over everybody else that's in a chair. And yeah, like Jeremiah mentioned, him and Ryan had these bags that were like falling apart with their chairs inside of them. Meanwhile, my shoulder was dying with this 100-pound chair I was having to lug around. Now, when I didn't get to sit, I was very comfortable sitting, but very uncomfortable walking around.
I'll add one more point to this. We saw a lot of people, and this might be an idea that we explore next time we go next year. Umbrellas, they can provide pretty good shade whenever the sun is just beating down on you. Maybe during the races, you bring the umbrella down so that everybody around you can have a nice view. But whenever you're in between events and you're just sitting there baking in the sun, it might not be the worst idea to have an umbrella there for you.
We'll cover this when we get into our day by day experience too, but the chairs can also save you seats. If you want to go grab food or something, no one's going to mess with some chairs sitting there. But if you're walking around or sitting somewhere, you can't really save a spot. Okay, number 5, find a view that you like and plant the chairs and have someone scout for better seats. So this kind of ties into the saving chairs I just mentioned, but there's an added benefit of we were in a group of 3. And so let's say for example, we find Circuit of the Americas, we find a good seat at turn number 3. Maybe we can't see fully down the S's cuz they have a walkway over there and we want to get a better seat. I would sit there in the chairs with Jeremiah and Ryan's chairs next to me while they would go walk down the way and try to find a better spot for us to go plant some chairs. Overall, you can't go too far down the track because, again, it takes a long time. Like, it probably took us 20-30 minutes to walk from turn 1 all the way down to turn 11. I don't know. It takes a very long time, I feel
More than
like.
that, but we'll cover
Yeah,
that.
takes a very long time. So you can't go too far, but you can scout the turns around you. You can scout the GA areas around you, and those chairs help you to save the seat.
I'll say this next one. This next one's kind of a problem. Number 6, look for video boards and speakers, but don't expect to really see them fully or to hear them. There's a lot of fans around you who are going to be having their own conversations or cheering for their drivers or etc. A lot of crowd noise. There's helicopters above. You're not going to fully be able to hear the speakers. And for the video boards, unless you're directly in front of them, I mean, they're on the other side of the track opposite from where you are. So the view isn't always the best of them. Luckily, my brother was able to zoom into the screens with his camera and we were able to see exactly who was in what position, and you could kind of make it out, but really we use the video boards for seeing video action. Like when you heard all the fans around you start to scream whoa, you look up at the video board and somebody's sitting in the gravel. I mean, and then you watch the replay. But as far as seeing lap time data or knowing exactly what driver is in what position, all that information can be hard to see. But make sure, unless you just want to be in the blind the entire time, make sure you find yourself a good video board and speaker so that you can get somewhat of the digital experience.
Yeah, there you can't follow the race like you would at home sitting on the couch. But again, if you're watching a quali or a sprint shootout like we saw, you can at least make out who's in what position. You can't see their times really. You can't, really follow much, but you can see, oh, Max is in the lead. Oh, Charles is in the lead, whatever. Because sometimes your phone doesn't work, your internet doesn't work, and so you can't get any of that. So you have no idea what's going on other than seeing
Right.
the cars drive around the track. Number 7, this might be a little bit more specific to us because we went with a goal of talking to people and meeting people and getting some interview content for our social media pages. But talk to the fans in the group sitting around you. We found everybody there to be extremely nice and pleasant. Everybody had a story. Everybody traveled in from somewhere. Really, nobody was local to that area. We didn't talk to anybody from the Austin area. They were from all parts of Texas. They were all from all parts of the United States. There were so many fans that drove up from Mexico. During the actual race, we sat to next to two guys that drove up from Monterrey, Mexico. They said it's a 6 hour drive, and they said it's closer than going to the Mexico City Grand Prix, and it's cheaper than going to the Mexico City Grand Prix. And so had a really good time talking to them. We sat next to this one family. What was that? What was the California family event? We were on the S's. That was the same one. That was the race.
Yeah, it's the
Um,
same time. We were sitting right next to the guys from Monterey, and then right in front of
yeah,
us were the people from California.
they flew in from California, wanted to go to the race. So just super interesting. You get to see the fan groups. Of course, you'll see a group of people sitting together in Red Bull shirts, a group of fans sitting together in McLaren shirts. You'll see a whole family where everyone's got a different constructor or driver shirts on. So it's just really interesting to spark those conversations and get to know the other F1 fans.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, granted, like he said, our mission was to reach out to all the different kinds of fans and talk to people, kind of get our name out there a little bit more. But in reality, even if you weren't trying to get yourself out there as some kind of personnel in the media world or whatever, talking to the fans around you, you can see, who they're cheering for, what drivers they like. And then as the actual race progresses, anytime you see that driver doing well or doing bad, you can look over to them and, do some kind of funny gesture, give them a hard time or cheer with them and cheer along with them. It gives you more of a camaraderie around yourself whenever you're doing this race. So, you're surrounded by all these people, but you don't really know anything about them. So talking to these people gives you a comfort that allows you to really cheer with them, and you feel like you're more of a part of a group.
And sometimes they have more information or access to things that you don't have while these events are going on. I learned about Lando Norris's 5 second penalty from the guys from Monterey. Would have had no idea otherwise.
Yeah.
We would have walked out of that race thinking that Lando finished ahead of Max if I didn't hear that from those guys.
Number 8 is change up your view either by event or by day, depending on what you're able to do. The reason why we have that is because when it comes to Sunday, you're pretty much planted in one spot and you're not going anywhere. And if you do, not only are you going to lose your good spot that you had, but it's going to be hard pressed to find another spot that's going to have a good view. When you're in the Friday events and the Saturday events, you can move around in between events, and you absolutely should. I mean, explore the track. I mean, you go look at what turn 11 looks like, because you'll have different advantages that to each area that'll allow you to see different parts of what the car is capable of. For the straights, you can really hear the engine and see how fast they're moving. When you go to the hairpins, you can see just how hard they're braking, and maybe even see some crazy overtakes as some people try to go to the outside or the inside. For us, we love the S's because you could really see them tearing through that section and just how many G's were getting pushed on these drivers as they were going through each individual curve. I mean, it's a completely different experience anywhere that you sit around the track.
I have a new appreciation for G forces after sitting that
Dude,
close to the S's. When
dude.
when you see a car going 180 through those S's, and it is so fast around turns that would flip an SUV at 30 miles an hour.
Well, the best part is that they had uh, some of the actual cars that you can buy, like a Mustang GT 500. They had McLarens out there. They had a Ferrari out there, Mercedes out there. And I guess it was one of those where you can get in with a professional driver and go for a hot lap with them. And these guys were going through the S's, and we're like, oh, they're on the brink of it. They're going as fast as they can. You could hear the tires skidding as they're really putting it on the very limit of what the car can do. And then when it came time for the Formula One qualifying, you see them go through that section twice as fast like it's nothing. And I was like, oh my gosh.
I'll add very, very last thing that's COTA specific, but any track, any F1 track that has seating around turn one's always going to be kind of the focal point of a race because it's the starting point. It's where a lot of overtakes happen, where a lot of action happens. At Circuit of the Americas for United States Grand Prix, you can get turn one seats on day one on a Friday. You can fight for some turn one seats on a Saturday. Even if you show up late, whatever, you can get there. Sunday, unless you are in the first batch of people entering that track, they filled up every inch of usable space on that hill that had a view of the track. So just don't get your hopes up, I'll say, unless you are super dedicated. And even if you're the most dedicated person, it still might not work out. So have some other areas of the track in mind that you'd like to take in a race from, no matter the track that you that you attend. Okay, you ready to go into our day by day?
Yeah, we'll move through these points a little bit faster now that we've hit the heavy tips for what to expect. A lot of this is just going to be reiterating what we found, that which is why we put it in the tips above. But we're going to kind of give you the rundown of what our experience was in all 3 days.
Okay, so I'll kick these off and then just layer in as you see fit with your perspectives. I'll start with just our general schedule and planning. We went for 3 days, so we went for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Friday was going to be it was a sprint weekend, so it's a little bit different than regular. But Friday was a practice and the sprint quali. Saturday was the sprint race, followed by the F1 quali, and then Sunday, of course, is just the race day. There are support races intermixed with between there at the United States Grand Prix. It was Masters Historic and Masters Endurance races, along with some Porsche Carrera Cup. That might be different depending on which F1 race you go to, which support races they have. We drove down early Friday morning. We did not get there a day early. We drove down Friday morning. I would suggest getting there a day early because as soon as we got to the track, we immediately got backed up into traffic and we legit missed the F1 practice. Like we were walking in as F1 practice was finishing. So we could hear the cars, we could see them going up turn one, but we did not actually get to take in the F1 practice. The first thing that we saw entering the gates, the merch stands. That's the first thing we noticed. They're everywhere.
Ridiculous.
They have merch stands by constructor, so you'll have a Red Bull booth, a Mercedes booth, but then they also have like these combined F1 merch things that are like buildings you walk into essentially, and they have all the teams in there. Crazy prices. I made a video, I posted it on YouTube. It's on our profile if you want to look at it. It's called like F1 merch prices are crazy or something like that. And I show the prices. I'll try to overlay some of that video on here if I'm able to. But we're talking at a minimum, you're paying $90 something for items.
That's on a cheap end. That's if you're lucky.
That's what I'm saying. Minimum for like a hat, you might be able to find a $90 hat. Most hats were $110 to $120. Anything shirt, jersey, polo related was going to be in the $135 to $175 range. Anything jacket, $300 plus. And then some items you would see for Ferrari or whatever were $400 or $500 that were specialty items. If you're taking the young ones with you, the kids with you, children's prices are just as crazy. Don't expect to be getting a discount because the items are smaller. They are still just as expensive. But really cool to see all the items in one place because we've never seen anything like that. To see 10 constructors' gear all lined up right in front of us and just
sweet.
It was sweet. Walk me through how you saw that turn one hill, because that's the second thing you see walking into COTA.
Well, first of all, it's the first thing you see pulling up to the track.
That's
right.
True.
So when we were driving up to the track, I was just like, oh my gosh. And as we get in, we go through the merchandise and look at that. Then we turn to our left and we look at this monstrous hill in front of us. And we had already made the idea that we were going to walk around, take one full lap around the track. So in doing so, you start with turn one. That's where we walked in at. Walking up this hill was insane. I mean, by the end of it, I was I was exhausted, and we had just finished turn one. We had another however many turns to go after that. But I mean, this hill, and you can turn around at any point and see a whole bunch of the track, and you can see the cars zipping past. There's people over there that are all just screaming and going crazy. If you go closer to the track, I mean, you can get pretty dang close to seeing the track. I mean, you can get pretty close to the track itself as they climb turn one, and you can hear the engines roar, see the cars go past. Again, they get hard on the brakes as they go into the hairpin of turn one and then accelerate down that hill. You don't realize how much downward that hill is whenever they're going on the other side of the hairpin going into turn two. You can pick up a lot of speed going through that whole section right there. But as we're going up the hill, we get to the top, and of course, the first thing we see at the top was more merchandise stands, which was, that's fine. But it gives you a second to kind of take it all in. That one, you're at the track, you can turn around, look at all of the fans, look at all of the cars, and it's a completely different notion that you're no longer watching this on TV, but you're seeing it live in person.
And you can almost see the entire track from the top of that hill. Almost. Right. most of the track you can see bits and pieces of from the top of that hill. It is so high up there, and that probably goes for every Formula One track. I don't think the TV cameras do the elevation changes
No,
justice.
no.
So any track, when they show you the before the race on Sky Sports or F1 TV, they show you the elevation map of the track. That is more exaggerated than it looks on TV. So just know that. Um, I'll kick in that the crowd size on day one I thought was pretty sizable. That was a bad assumption.
Yeah.
It significantly ramped up. That was not a lot of people compared to what it could have been. Okay, so general admission specifics, turns 2 through 11 are it's a long stretch of the track, of course, going through 9 turns, but that's pretty much all general admission minus 2 or 3 grandstands. So if you're going to the Circuit of the Americas, USGP, 2 through 11 is fantastic views, pretty much all the way down. Maybe the exception of turns 8 and 9, very light and sparse at turns 8 and 9.
Yeah, you don't
That's
really get to see too much.
It's a braking zone, no overtakes. They're done with the S's, so not a lot of action. But anything on the S's, so anything 2 through about 6 was beautiful to watch the cars go through. And then turn 11, which we took in the sprint for, also great because it's the point of the track where you can see the cars the longest. The cars are coming at you for what? 8 to 10 seconds coming down the hill and then accelerating through the straightaway for 8 to 10 seconds. So you get to see them for probably 20 to 30 seconds.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. I felt like we were going to see the most overtakes there. That wasn't the case. But it is really cool because you get to see them slam on the brakes, come around the corner, and then just book it down the straight. And what was really cool is when they were doing the formation lap, for the actual sprint race itself, Max was in the lead at the time, and so he backs everybody up at turn 11 so that he's not sitting on that line just waiting forever for everybody to catch up. And then he takes off, and one by one you see them take off, and you see them do the left and right motion to pick up the heat in the tires. Oh, it looked so cool.
I am so glad we sat there for the sprint because if we sat there for a quali or a practice, we wouldn't have seen the backup and the takeoff.
That was sweet.
It was sweet. Okay, Jeremiah mentioned this a little bit ago, but we're getting around to where we've walked the whole track. So we've been turn 1, we did 2 through 11. Well, we've got to get all the way back around to turn 20? So here's the thing that is COTA specific. The straightaway between turns 11 and 12, no general admission.
Nope.
0, none. You can't even stay on the premises to go from turns 11 through 12. You exit the track and you re-enter at turn 15 at the big fan entrance.
That whole area is RV parking. So if you have an RV, you can park it in there, back up your RV to the track. You're good. We saw some interesting things like a bunch of people on a scissor lift all the way at the top in that little RV area, which is genius in my opinion.
If you got a deal on a scissor lift, bring it.
But yeah, we did a whole bunch of walking. This straight, by the way, I understand that it's the longest straight on the track. And yeah, it's a straight and the cars don't spend too much time on it. But yeah, it's pretty long. It's not as long as Mexico but it's a long straight to walk. I mean, we were walking forever and we finally got to the end and I was like, oh, dude, this is turn 12. we went one turn.
And it took forever, and we're not even in the track anymore, and you're tired, and you just want to sit down, and you're hungry now.
I will say that other entrance that we went to when we finally got to the other side, that was turn 12, 13, 14, and 15. That's really your fan zone area. So there was the pit stop challenge section where you could try and take off the tires as fast as you had. They had oversized helmets that you could take pictures with. They had virtual pit stop or virtual pit experiences. That's where they had the simulators. This weird thing that brushes you with air. I don't really know what that was supposed to be about.
It blows the force of air on you that an F1 driver experiences.
Oh, I guess when they're driving.
And then it takes a video of you.
Jeez. Yeah, it was funny to see. But that whole area, of course, a bunch of different merch shops, all kinds of different food that you can get in. They had this whole picnic area that was in a nice shaded area where you could go get food and then find a seat, which was impossible, by the way. There's no sitting down, even on a Friday. But I mean, so depending on where you enter, you kind of get a completely different experience because all that fan zone experience stuff, we didn't really get to see where we entered, but seeing it on that side was pretty sweet.
We did grab a pizza. It was a personal pizza. It was about 3 bites of food. I think they were $16 a piece. And honestly, they weren't worth it. But if you're hungry and you have to eat, it's worth it because that's all that there is.
Your pepperoni pizza with 2 slices of pepperoni on it.
I mean, it wasn't the worst thing. It's event food, but everything is expensive. Honestly, I was a little bit surprised. Bottles of water were only like $5. I thought they'd be more.
If you're a beer
Um,
drinker, you're looking at 18 to $22.
yeah, it's rough. Oh, and if you want a sports drink, they only had Blue Powerade. I drank like 12 Blue Powerades over 3 days. I drank a lot of Blue Powerade. This is the only thing they had. So yeah, we found a GA sitting spot to sit and eat around turn 16, I believe, and we took in some of the support races from there. Not a great view, honestly. Not a lot of action. We got out of there pretty much as soon as we were done eating. Good.
Oh, I was gonna say that's where we went through the over the top of the track.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so this probably applies to every track, but at Austin specifically, there's like an infield and the outfield section. You know, the outfield's where most of the seating is, and the GA and the grandstands, all that. The infield is they have some GA, um, a lot of merch stands and all that. But how you
Food.
get to them in COTA was not overly apparent to us until we got to that turn 16 GA spot where we saw these series of walkways and bridges. Later, we find out there's also a series of tunnels around the track. So look at this kind of stuff before you go to the race. Pull up whatever app the track might have, or pull up the like not the turn map of each track, but like how you get around, how you access different parts of the track, because that might save you having to walk a really long way. If you're somebody not interested in walking the full 20-mile exterior of the track, you can use the bridges and tunnels to get where you need to go. So we crossed over to the infield, hung around there for a minute, and then we crossed back over actually straight to the S's and saved ourselves about a 5-mile walk.
Yeah. I'll say this, the only thing that does stink about that is whenever you are over the top, that whole area is boarded up. There is
Mm-hmm.
no standing on top of the bridge and looking, and they do that on purpose so that you don't have this massive backup of people waiting to cross the bridge. But you're just sitting there the whole time listening to, whoa, whoa, can't see a thing, but you are directly above the action.
Yeah, they very conscious effort to make sure you cannot see out of any areas of those walkways or bridges. I mean, not anything. You can't even get a glimpse of sunlight through those things. Okay, so we'll get to kind of the end of day one here. We set on the S's for the sprint shootout. At that point, we are still struggling a little bit to figure out how keeping up with the action worked. Internet coverage spotty at best, so you can't really follow along on your phone too well. We had the video boards so that you could see where the drivers were in the action, but as we know with most qualifying type events, it really comes down to the last lap you run. So we didn't have a lot of information, but again, it was really cool seeing the cars go at full speed for the first time on day one, especially because we had missed the majority of the practice sessions. What are your thoughts on the sprint shootout?
The sprint shootout was cool because, like you said, it's the first time you actually get to see them get on it, especially in the S's. Because in the practice session, they'll do a fast lap and they'll do a conservative lap. But even when they're doing those fast laps, they're fueled all the way up. They're doing, they're on hards or whatever it is. Maybe they're still getting a feel for exactly how they want to attack the track. Keep in mind the whole track was completely redone, so they had to get to grips with the grip to see what the best spots of the track were going to be to attack. And so during the sprint shootout, it was the first time you got to see no fuel, little to no fuel, soft tires, giving it everything you got, going through the S's, and that was sweet. I'll say they did the format where it's, what is it, hards in SQ1, mediums in SQ2, and softs in SQ3. So we got to see a comparison of what all the cars could do on the different tires. But when you get to SQ3, man, they are booking it through those S's.
And again, because we had seen some of the earlier like support race type stuff, man, the F1 cars go so much faster than those other cars.
Because you see the Porsche cars going, and you're like, wow, those things are hauling. And then you see an F1 car do the exact same thing in half the time.
Like half the time through the S's. It was incredible. So as we wrap up that day, we did make our way back to turn one to the GA section. We were able to find a spot on the top of the hill. A lot of the people had cleared out because Formula One was done for the day, but they still had some of the Masters historic or endurance races left, or qualifying events, I think they were.
Yeah.
And so we sat at the top of turn one hill and just took that in. And that was really cool I mean, the support race part kind of, they're a little bit iffy because you don't know anything about the cars or the drivers. It is cool to see the different cars, but just to take in the track and the atmosphere and watching cars go around that turn, highly recommend.
So, what Thomas told y'all earlier, we drove in Friday morning. And then what also he told you was it was day one, I did not do any kind of sunblock. Didn't find too much shade at all. And so by the time we were watching the Masters Endurance sitting on the hill of turn one, I was found myself nodding off pretty good, like throughout the entire event. So
He was a little tuckered out.
yeah, so I'll say get where you're trying to get, whether it's the local town or maybe a town over to find a hotel that you can stay in. Get there the night before the actual event takes place. Get some good sleep. And then throughout the entire day, sunscreen, shade, and hydrate. I mean, you're going to be tempted to do the typical, oh, I'm going to grab a drink. Maybe if you like alcohol, grab yourself a cocktail or a beer or something. Hydrate, or you're going to be dozing off during the final events of the day like I was.
Yeah, and mainly just avoid sleep deprivation, which I think is what you were running on at that point.
Yeah.
Okay, day two. Obviously, everything's behind schedule already because of traffic and parking and getting into the stadium. So that's already happening. Crowd size noticeably bigger on day two. We had a sprint race. So this is probably a bit more packed than a regular day two, where it's a regular practice into quali weekend. I think the sprint race brings out a little bit more fans. And so significantly more people. We started again by entering the facility, going to our right, which is where turn one is. The hill, significantly more packed, but not near as packed as it could be.
And somehow felt harder to walk up than the day before.
Because we had to take a longer path to go around all the people. And we were tired and exhausted. And
my feet hurt, man.
Don't wear whatever shoes Jeremiah wore. He was
Also,
having a
if
real
you're
tough
going to
time.
walk the entire track, I mean, I guess you should, but really you shouldn't.
We wanted to, on day two for the sprint race, which was the first F1 event of the day, we wanted to go back to turn 11, which was a pretty far walk, but we thought that that would be a really cool view to see those cars coming down at us for a couple of seconds and then leaving for a couple of seconds. And so we took in the sprint for that. And honestly, there wasn't a lot of action in the sprint. We didn't get a lot of action at turn 11, but what we could see really, really well was the gaps being created between the top four drivers and the rest of the field. If you watched the sprint race, you saw Max and you saw Lando, and who else was up there? Was it?
It was both Ferraris and then both Mercedes. Or no, not Lewis. Lewis dropped back, but you saw George in there.
You just saw every lap those four pull away, and the rest of the track, who are being held up by a Haas and being held up by Sergio Perez and all that, just slowly.
And then you see this massive gap from the top five, and then the next in the sixth place, which was Haas of Kevin Magnussen. You see this massive gap falling, but you also see the gap between Max and Lando as Max takes off, and you're starting to think this is going to be an interesting race on Sunday because Max is gone, and that gap isn't getting any smaller throughout every single lap that went by. Also, what you saw was Lewis dropped from the pack, and the top four took off without Lewis. Or no, maybe I have this wrong. I think it was, let's see, Red Bull, McLaren, both Ferraris, both Mercedes. That's five, and then six, and then seven was Magnussen. Regardless, Lewis fell back. Then we see George starting to make a move, and then somehow something goes wrong with George. Everybody passes George, and you see George fall back, and you see this massive gap between the top four guys of Max, Lando, Charles, and Carlos, and then this huge gap all the way to George, and then Lewis catching up to George, and then another huge gap as you get to the Magnusens, the Hulkenbergs. Sergio Perez was stuck back there. Piastri was working up the field. But this, you could really see, when you see on TV the gap between the top drivers in the midfield, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's a pretty big gap size. When you see it in person to where there's just nothing on the track for a while, oh, and then the rest of the cars start to show up, it's really noticeable.
In a sprint race that was only like 19 laps.
Yeah. And also with the Mercedes falling back like that, you start to get another glimpse of what Sunday's going to hold. Oh, Mercedes isn't looking too good. I wonder how that's going to roll for the actual race on Sunday.
We did get some of our first fan interaction at turn 11. We wanted to do some F1 trivia. We had brought these little cars that we had bought that I think we gave away a Max Verstappen little model, like 143rd model car. We found the Orange Army. They were there. They were loud. They were proud.
They were
They were
Dutch.
they were Dutch. They were fully decked out in their orange Max gear. So we went up. We found a guy named Nick. Nick was an awesome participant. He played some Max Verstappen trivia. He nailed the first two questions about Max, which was something about who's like the reigning drivers champion, and then what are Max's 3 home races. And then I asked him the hard question, which was how many Grand Prix victories does Max have? And he said 50 or 60. We helped him out a little bit and eventually landed on 61.
We got
But
stiffed a couple times as we tried to get a couple more interviews.
we did. People are moving. They might have somewhere to get to. So we'd
Right.
ask people if they wanted a chance to win a car or play some trivia, and they would keep going on about their day. That's fine. But overall, I think most of our interactions were super pleasant out there. We got to talk to people. We handed out some of our F1, some of our Turn 1 merch that we had. People getting access to our YouTube channel and subscribing, and so that was really, really cool. Okay, we moved over to the S curves for quali. I don't have much for quali other than we kind of started to figure out how to watch the video boards, how to check things on our phone, how to listen to the action around us. And I think kind of by the end of the day, too, we knew how to keep up with the action.
Yeah, I'll say quali is a weird one because, in my personal opinion, I feel like quali only gets exciting when it comes to the last few laps of every session, because that's when it determines who's going to get where and if they're going to advance or if they're going to be stuck back in the section below. But so while you're waiting for that to kind of culminate, you get to watch the drivers go by, and it's always wild to see. You can tell when somebody's on a heater and when somebody's on a cool down lap. As the cool down lap, you see them go wide around one of the corners, or maybe they go to the inside of the track and slow down, and then you just see whoa, like one of the cars on a hot lap, and it's noticeable. Also, when the cars are on a cool down lap and preparing for their next lap, they go through the S's the same speed as the Porsche Cups were going full throttle.
Which is significantly slower than the ones on a heater.
Yeah.
I'll add in, so whenever you're watching on TV, they keep the action on all the time for the TV viewer, so there's always something to watch. When you're actually watching a qualifying event in person, though, like Jeremiah mentioned, what were the sessions? 15 minutes or so for each quali session?
Yeah, about.
Something like that, 15-minute timer. You might see a Williams and a Stake and an Alpine go out and take some laps. You don't see a Red Bull, a Mercedes, a McLaren, a Ferrari on track until like the 8-minute mark. And they throw down one lap. So you see them go around 3 times. They do an out, they do a heater, then they do a back end lap. And then everyone goes out for one more lap with, 2.5 minutes left. So while you're watching on TV, you're like, okay, yeah, the action is pretty constant. When you're watching it in person, they don't run that many laps. They might get 2 heaters in a session.
Yeah.
The top teams, at least. Now, again, your back markers are trying to throw down a little bit more to get some times in, which Haas took advantage of, I think, by getting pretty good times for both the sprint and the race, but not that many laps. Okay, so the end of day 2, we feel really bad. Day 1, we missed the Sting concert on Friday. Jeremiah really wanted to see Sting. He was in tears as we left the facility. He had to get some sleep. But day 2, we were not missing Eminem.
No.
So we walk up the track from the S curves to where the super stage entrance is, and there is a line 14 miles long of people to enter the super stage.
It's a bit dramatic, but I understand.
It was a pretty long line. So what they do is they have the concert in the infield part of the track. And so you can't get to it because the track has events running on it. So they have everybody back up on the outside of the track part. And then as soon as all the racing action done, as soon as the track is clear, they open the floodgates and everybody rushes in.
Pandemonium. It's insane.
We took some video of that, I want to say. I'll try to see if I can find that and put that over the video. But yeah, thousands of people rushing in to get a good view of Eminem. I don't know how many people were at that concert, but it was a lot.
Oh, dude, it was so many people. It was
It's a
ridiculous.
massive field filled with people. But you can use your lawn chairs. So
Which, you're not really sitting, but
I said a little bit.
Thomas isn't the biggest Eminem fan.
Do you have any takeaways from Eminem?
I mean, I thought it was absolutely incredible, but that's just because he's one of my favorite artists of all time, me personally. So I was standing up, jamming every single song. I was singing the lyrics, and I'd look over at Thomas, sitting in the chair, just hanging out,
It was
looking at
relaxing.
people. No,
I'll
it
say
was
it was
really cool. The only thing that was I kept wondering, because the track, if you're not aware, it's not in Austin. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere, but just outside of Austin. So I wanted to know if you were in a plane flying overhead and, they're like, Austin, take your phones out, put the camera lights on or what, the flashlight. And then
we lit that field up.
yeah, I'm wondering what it would have looked like from a passenger plane going on overhead. It was a lot of people.
I'll also say, to Eminem's credit, that was a full, minus openers, which I don't really care about openers anyways. That was a full concert.
Oh, great concert. Hour and a half
At least. Yeah. With multiple guest artists appearing in the set.
Great show. Great show.
As we go to leave, we saw these drones sitting on the ground earlier in the day. We could tell there was going to be some kind of drone show. We were hoping it was involved in the Eminem show somehow. It wasn't. It was just a big advertisement for Kraken.
Yep.
So kind of cool, but also less cool that it was an ad.
Yeah. I wish they didn't start with the Kraken sponsorship. I wish they had started with, they had an F1 car. They had the outline of COTA. They had an outline of Texas. They had all kinds of different things. But they started it all off with Kraken. And I was like,
I'm out.
All right.
Could have been cooler than it was. It was still cool, I guess, but it was an ad.
I still got video footage of that.
Day 3, we wake up at our hotel, go outside. My truck gets broken into. We're missing a window, got shattered in. I won't go into too much detail on that, but that definitely factored into us being a little bit. We weren't late to the race or anything, but we got to the track hours out. We wanted to be walking in when the gates opened, and we did not.
We had to go to Walmart. We get this little brush to brush out all the glass. We got the heavy duty Gorilla tape and the contractor grade trash bags. Put it all across the window, taped it up nice.
We called another hotel along the way, asked if we could drop our bags there. They gladly let us, and so it's like a 3-hour detour to get to the track that day with what we had to do.
I didn't even get my hotel breakfast. Thomas was in a sour mood after that, rightfully so. It's just a
Jeremiah's over there like, can I go get my eggs and sausage? I'm gonna get in the truck. Getting out of here. Not spending another second at this place. So anyways, we pull up to the track. Noticeable difference in traffic and parking and people. Race day, insane. I mean, easily double the people of any of the days previously.
Thomas claims to have seen Otmar. I don't know if that's the case.
Otmar was standing at the intersection in a suit, talking to a fan. It was Otmar Snafu, whatever his last name is. It was him. He's unemployed right now, or he's doing something else. He ain't working for Alpine.
He just happened to be in Austin, Texas, going to the COTA race.
Yeah, he's still going to the races. I'm sure he's got some role for somebody, I'm sure. But yeah, he's parking GA like us. He was getting his snacks like Ryan was every day from that little booth, handing out snack crackers. Yeah, the crowd was different. Turn 1, that's the most people. I've been to so many sporting events and college football games. That was the most densely packed area of people I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, yeah. Typically whenever you go to a sporting event, or maybe even if you go to a concert, you can always do the old hold each other's hands and go, excuse me, and make your way through the crowd all the way to the front. No, everybody was basically breathing down each other's necks. There was no space whatsoever, and nobody was going to give up their spot.
Yeah, I tried to look around turn 1 to see if there was somewhere we could squeeze in, just on the off chance. I mean, not an inch of turn 1 was unused, which we expected, but at the same time, you're still like, this is crazy because that hill is massive and it was filled with people.
And going up that hill the third time, that was the death of me.
we up at the top of turn one, we did find some more fans that we interviewed. Those videos are posted on our YouTube and TikTok. You can see those. I think they're labeled "How F1 Fans Became Fans." We talked to a couple that were Mercedes and McLaren fans. We talked to a guy that was a Pierre Gasly, Carlos Sainz, and Williams racing fan. He was covering it all, which is cool. We talked to a vocal Red Bull Checo supporter that loved everything about Checo, has followed him through his whole career. You know, Force India into Red Bull. Really, really cool atmosphere on race day. Everybody was pumped up. We found spots right between turn 2 and 3, which I say turned out to be pretty good seats for the race.
Oh yeah.
So turns 2 and turns 3 are right before the S's, but you have a full vantage point down the S's looking to your right. So you can still see the cars ripping through there, even though you're not sitting on them. And you can see the cars coming around the turn from turn 1. So like as soon as somebody does an overtake or at turn 1, you see that action immediately in front of you, which was really, really cool. What we did was don't get fooled by the massive wall of people at the top of the GA hills. All of the GA areas are hills. They're inclined so that people can see. There might be a wall of people at the top, and you're like, oh, this area is full. No, it's not.
Just break
Walk down
through.
a little bit.
Just
Yeah.
break through.
Break through the wall, walk down. People aren't looking down the track a little bit. We found spots halfway up the hill. Great
Yeah.
seats.
And we were so close to the actual fence itself. I mean, the cars were right in front of us. It was sweet.
Yeah, we had a great vantage point of all the way from, I want to say, turns 2 through when they went around turn 6. We could see clear as day.
Yeah.
That was a pretty good view.
Yeah.
Let's see. Pre-race activities, reconnaissance laps. I'll cover this really quickly. We had known that there were laps run before a formation lap in an F1 race. I didn't know that too long ago, though. I always thought formation laps were the first laps F1 cars put down on race day. They're not. Cars are allowed to do reconnaissance laps. You're allowed to run out however many laps you want to in the time allotted, so long as you enter the pit at the end of every lap. You can't complete an actual lap. So we got to see that. Sometimes if you're watching F1 TV, you might hear those in the back of a Will Buxton interview or something like that. But you get to see that on if you're actually attending the race. They brought out the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders, had them dancing on the grid where the cars were basically. They did the national anthem, which I believe the singers for the national anthem were up in the tower.
I think that's right.
Because I think that's why the helicopter was showing the people in the tower. I think. Also, be ready. There's a lot of helicopters everywhere all the time, just all over. We had a flyover from 4 fighter jets,
Yeah.
which was pretty sweet.
Which is pretty typical of American sporting events in general. Just anytime you're doing the national anthem, you'll have a little flyover. But it was still really cool to see.
It was sweet. And then there was some fireworks before the race started. And then it was that time. The Rolex clock went down to the hour mark, and off they went on their formation lap, just like you see on TV. And the crowd felt different from any other event prior to that when that formation lap was starting. Checo went by, they got crazy loud. Max goes by, they get crazy loud. Lando goes by. You hear all the different fan groups. I don't know if I was ready for kind of how special that would feel when that race was about to start.
No, it was incredible because the second you hear and the race is underway, or if you're listening to the other one and it's lights out and away we go, and you see them climbing the hill on the TV, which, you know, we didn't get to see in person, but you watch it on the TV. And then as they're coming down after you do the hairpin, that's when they come into view for us right there at the end of turn 2. And you just see whoa, 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 and they all go through the S's in this one long snake of a line. It was so intense. I loved every second of it.
And again, we had a video board kind of in front of us, so you could see the action unfold at turn 1, and then immediately was unfolding in front of your face because we're at turns 2 and 3.
Yeah.
So you're like, I just saw that, and now they're here. They were there, and now they're here. And it was Again, a little bit difficult at first to know what drivers were in what position, but I'd say probably 4 or 5 laps in, once things spread out as an F1 race did, every time they would come around turns 2, Jeremiah would look at me and go, Max, Lando, Charles, Carlos, like right before they appear from around the
Well,
turn.
hang on. Just a correction on that. Not that it mattered because you were just giving names as an example, but it was
Yeah, I know.
Charles, long gap, Max.
I mean, I know this isn't a race recap, but the Ferraris were cooking.
Dude, that gap that Charles put to Max after about every single lap, it got a little bit bigger. But after you'd look at it, say 7, 8 laps in, and it's just this massive where literally Charles would go into our point of view, go through the S's and around turn 6 out of view, and then Max would enter our view. I was like, no way.
To explain the gap, and this is what Jeremiah is referencing, but I know the exact moment he's referencing. So again, we're watching turn 2. So as they're coming around this bank turn out of turn 2, where they appear out of nowhere, all the way down to turn 6, where they disappear again for a sport. Pretty good section of the track with the S's in between. They got to a point where one lap, I could still see Charles exiting turn 6 as Max was coming around turn 2. And I look at Jeremiah and I say, next lap, Charles will be out of view by the time Max rounds that turn. And Jeremiah's like, no way, dude. Because I don't know if you were paying attention to that
Not
point.
at all.
Or
I was
just,
looking at the Haas guys.
yeah, you just didn't recognize, how big the gap was. And so here they come again around about a minute and a half later. Here comes Charles. Watch him go all the way down the track. Turn our head. 3 seconds later, here comes Max. And you were like, whoa. Because it's one thing, you're watching on TV from the helicopter and you could see all the cars on track relatively. You could see the battles and they look kind of close. When you're sitting there in person and you can see 6 turns in front of you, vroom, wait 12 seconds. Vroom.
That's
It's
ridiculous.
a long time.
It's ridiculous.
We took in the race. It was a great race. I'm sure we'll cover that at some other point on a video, but it was a great race because we had the last 10 lap battle between Max and Lando, culminated in a Lando penalty. That is highly controversial as I've watched more videos throughout this week of whether or not Lando should have been assessed that penalty.
Yeah.
And the Ferraris had a day, and Lewis had a really bad day.
Yeah. As he hits gravel, what was it, 3-4 laps in?
Yeah, and just got out and packed it up. Oh, we got to see a couple safety car laps. That was kind of cool.
Yeah.
So this was your probably favorite part of the weekend. Walk us through leaving the race.
So pack it up. We're taking off. And, it's everybody does what they always do. They immediately rush the track and everybody's running down to pit lane to do the podium ceremony and all of that. And I was like, Thomas, we should do that. Thomas like, there's no way. Literally 5 minutes they'll be doing the podium celebration, which he was wrong by a lot, but that's fine.
I just really thought we were so far and that they do it so quick. I thought there was no way.
So we're walking, going around, making our way back around turn 2, making our way around turn 1. We all get filed into lines like animals and making our way through. And, we're like, okay, we're just going to go back to the truck and take off. It's been a day. It's been a great day. We'll head back home. As we're heading in the direction of where the entrances are and everything, I see a bunch of people filing out to the right. And I'm like, what's this? So I turn right, and Thomas and Ryan follow me. And we see an opening to the track. So we walk out onto the track at turn 1 at the very top of the hill, right as, they had just gotten done with the Monegasque national anthem, and they had just done the, what was it, the Italian national anthem after that? Yeah. So then as we're walking onto the track, now granted, we're not all the way down in front of the pits, in front of the podium and everything else. We're clear the heck up at the top of turn 1. But we got out on track right as they were doing the and then this champagne just flying, and it was a really cool experience because, one, Thomas and I have been watching F1 for 2-3 years now, and we've watched COTA every single year. Not only that, but we both play the video game, and we've played at COTA multiple times. But there's something different about actually standing on turn one, on the physical asphalt of turn one, and seeing the hill, seeing the hairpin, seeing the descent into turn two.
The skid marks that just
I was
happened.
just about to say, seeing the skid marks on turn one as guys go off the track or as they come in too hot, whatever it is, it was insane. So much so that we had to do our recap video on turn one.
Uh, Incredible. And I do want to be clear, we were not part of the group that got COTA fined $550,000 for storming the track
No.
too soon. That was some other area of the track that was unsecured by COTA, and fans entered the track before all the cars were cleared. We
Yeah.
were well after that group.
Oh yeah, they had already gone to the cool down room. Then they had gone back up on the podium. They'd done the Monegasque national anthem, the Italian national anthem. Then we entered the track.
Yeah, that was sweet. I'm glad that you found that little entrance, saw those people. I'm glad you followed them because, yeah, we ended up at top of turn one. We ended up walking down to the grid, to the
Yeah.
start finish line,
Yeah.
and then that's where we exited the track. Took a ton of pictures and videos of that. Again, I'll overlay that stuff on top of this video. We'll also release a ton more shorts over the next couple of days and weeks from our experience. We tried to release as much as we could there, which wasn't a lot because the internet was so bad. We could get like 2 videos posted a day anytime we left the track, but anytime we were inside the facility, nothing would post. So
Right.
we were kind of stuck with it. We would do these like update videos that we had to just delete basically because they had no bearing after that day anymore. We'd be like, man, we just took in the sprint shootout, and here's what happened. Doesn't matter because we couldn't post it until 9 hours later.
Granted, maybe if we had like, I don't know, Starlink or some kind of other form of something rather out there, maybe some kind of mobile hotspot. I don't know. We'll have to do some
COTA
research
had
into it.
Wi-Fi, but I couldn't get the Wi-Fi to work very well, so I don't know. So then we left.
Oh god.
We
Exhausted.
yeah, we exited through a tunnel for the first time. Went back to our parking lot. Took no, that's not when we used the tunnel. We used the tunnel after
No,
the Eminem
the
concert.
tunnel was after
That's
the
right.
Eminem concert.
We left out on the normal parking lot, went to the car, took a very long time to exit the
Oh yeah.
parking lot. Took a good hour to get out of the parking lot. And then we headed back home. And I'll say overall, 10 out of 10 experience. I would do it every single year. It's worth the money. The GA seats were 350 or 375 a piece.
Absolutely.
100% worth it. If you want to get a grandstand seat, I get it. But GA offered flexibility. You get a grandstand seat for 3 days, you're locked into that view. And honestly, you got to see the vantage point of a lot of the grandstands. They're not the best vantage point
I mean,
sometimes.
the S's and that whole area probably turns 2 through 6 or 7. You probably could have seen all of that very well from the grandstands, and I get that. And you would have had a little bit higher of a view, so maybe you could have saw the drivers coming down the straight from 11 to 12, and that all would have been fine. I get that. You get the vantage point, but the main problem is that you're tied to that spot, and we enjoyed the ability to float around. We caught a little bit of turn one's view, caught a little bit of turn 2, 3, 4, 5. We made it all the way to 11, checked that out for a while, looked at the
Turn
view from turn
16.
15 or 16, whatever it was.
Yeah, we got to see a little bit of everything. So, I mean, I get it if you want a seat and you want a guaranteed spot, you don't want to fight anybody, you want to park it for a weekend. I get it. But it is considerably more money, like 3 or 4 times at minimum, to get a grandstand seat. So just keep that in mind that GA is not the end of the world if you've got some good lawn chairs or something like that. Again, we'll be posting more content about our experience at the USGP. We've got more shorts to roll out. We posted probably 12 or so short videos already. So if y'all want to check our channel and go back and watch those, it always helps us if you subscribe, like the videos, and comment. We're trying to grow our following. We were able to do a little bit of that this past weekend. We got a number of subscribers. So if y'all can help us out and leave us comments for anything that you want to see or any feedback you want on the race, if you're going to be attending a race this year or next year, ask us a question. We'll let you know our experience and try to help you out.
Guys, if we can continue this train of building our channel up, I mean, we're now at 220 subscribers, maybe a little bit more than that. If we continue to grow and get bigger and bigger, I mean, eventually that culminates in media passes, getting into the pits. That's all footage that we will get to take and then show y'all so that you can see everything that the average person doesn't get to see at the track. Anytime that we can get special entrance into special things, if we're allowed footage, we're going to give you that footage so that you can see everything.
Yeah, we didn't get to do as much exploring as we wanted to, mainly because again, everything took way longer than we thought, and everything was way further away than we thought. And we explored a little bit, but we were like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna see how close we can get to the garages." We couldn't even figure out how to get
No.
relatively close to the garages.
Also, they have banners, and those banners say if you're caught in an unauthorized area that you could be banned from the track permanently. And with it being our first time,
We'll
didn't
be a
really
little
want to
bit more.
blow it.
We'll be a little bit more bold in 3 years. We've seen it. We've been there. I don't need to be back here again.
I'd like to go next year. I'm just saying.
All right, guys. Like I said, subscribe. Leave us a comment. Anything else you want to see, let us know, and follow along for our updates.
Guys, if you think that we need to go to find another Grand Prix, we need to go to Canada, maybe make the trip down to Mexico, Sao Paulo, you're gonna have to send us money because we're too broke for that.
All right, we'll see you.
Bye, guys.